Thank you very much. Good evening. It is most definitely an honor for me to be here with you this evening and for us to have this time together to share. One, to acknowledge, first of all, the presence of the creator who is responsible for my being here, not only for the journey that started early this morning, but a journey that started a long time ago, for how God has done incredible and remarkable things in my life through me, and for that I am eternally grateful. And to a place as opening and as affirming as Northaven, to be a part of this great connection called United Methodist. I grew up in Seattle, Charleston, South Carolina, and my father's part of the family was African Methodist Episcopal, and my mother's part of the family was United Methodist, and one out. And so I have enjoyed and have learned the great mysteries of the Bible. Through much I've learned that the lens of the church. Growing up on the Sea Islands of Charleston, it was always strange to me that I knew more about Methodists across the country than I knew about the Methodist Church, the white Methodist Church right down this road, not street, road, from where we worship. And primarily because on the islands, we all spoke God, Geechee. I can say it when you call it South Carolina Geech. I can say it. But I wrote as I spoke, and during the summer months, Methodist missionaries, young students, would come to the Sea Islands to help us on the remedial reading program. And it was through that reading program that I not only learned the love of reading and learned how to write, but I also learned the love of Christ. They challenged me in ways that I continue to live out this incredible faith of mine today. They challenged me. Methodist students who didn't find it robbery okay to come and spend the summer teaching young people how to read. But what they taught me more importantly is the historic institution and lens in which we view the world. And being young and naive, growing up on the Sea Islands of Charleston, I didn't understand what the issues of race and racism was all about. Especially not in this beloved church of ours. Did not understand that. But it was through those lens that I also, unfortunately, learned the god-awful history of race. I was educated in the poor, rural, segregated public school systems of Charleston County. I didn't go to school with the white kids in my community. I went to a segregated all-black high school. And I remember when I was about to leave for college, and one of my high school teachers told me that I should go to this small black college in South Carolina, that I shouldn't even think about going to the University of South Carolina. And I decided that I was going to the University of South Carolina because I wanted a different kind of experience. And what I didn't know is that years long before I was even thought of, that people had sacrificed and really knocked open those doors to the University of South Carolina, to other institutions of higher learning across this country, knowing that they would never even walk in. But they did it because they knew that some unnamed, unlearned, young, had hair back then, here with a little black boy from the Sea Islands of Charleston would try to get in. So I went to the university, and I give this historical context because I think before we can view the lens of what we call the new Jim Crow era, we got to understand what Jim Crow was all about. And many of you lived through that era. I'm young enough that I should not have experienced. Life should have been very different. I am young enough where those debts had been paid already. And even today, I think that those debts have been paid. While I was at the university, one day, Charles, so I had just graduated from the university. I became the first African American chaplain at the University of South Carolina at Columbia College. And a group of us went to this restaurant one day and was rudely turned around. And here I was with a degree from the University of South Carolina. I had good white friends, not just some white friends, but good white friends. I was a chaplain at the USC, and I even had a little bit of money in my pocket. And I was turned around because I was black. This is not 1964, not 1974, 84, 94. It was just absolutely amazing, in the late 1980s. And what I realized then is what unfortunately so many people have come to realize, and that we must view not only the lens of what was then the Jim Crow era and what we call now the new era of Jim Crow Esquire, his children now not wearing white hoods but wearing suits, and understanding that era for our people, by the back a little, was one of immense. So when we immense danger, immense sacrifice. So when we talk about that era, when we talk about our people and how many bubbles were in the bar soap in order to just register the vote, how many jelly beans were in a jar. When they would wake up in the morning and see strange fruits hanging from their trees, there were bodies of black men who were lynched. That's the eyes of Jim Crow. That's the eyes of that era in which I thought I had so narrowly seen through the opportunities that had been afforded to me. And now I find myself now fighting battles that I thought we had already won, still even today. Those same rights, those same voting rights, those same rights that we thought that we were enjoying, are the same rights we fight even today to make sure that our children, that my grandson, and I keep a picture of him with me, usually either on my phone or in my presentation, because it reminds me of what it is that I do and why I do it each and every day. Yes, I know I don't look old enough to have grandchildren, but I do. I was young and I didn't listen to my mom. So, I want to, this is the eyes in which we must view the America in which we live in today. An America where we can literally say on big billboards, welcome to America, with 5% of the world's population, or 25% of the world's inmates. Welcome to America where we would spend $88,000 to send a person to prison every year, more than $88,000 to send a person to prison each year, but won't spend $9,000 to educate them in good quality public school. Welcome to America. Over 2.3 million African American men, boys, and women find themselves tied up somewhere in the criminal justice system. Welcome to America, with 60% of U.S. prisons are now occupied by folks of the darker complexion. The one they used to send to the kitchen when company came. Welcome to America. Welcome to America, where we spend, budgets over the last year have inflated and gone up and up and up on incarceration rate, but we spend on the money that we spend on public education, both at the grade school level and also at the higher education level, has gone down and down and down. It's a numbing notion that our schoolhouses have become social hunting grounds for prisons instead of recruiting grounds for colleges. We live in a society that criminalizes those who come to this country seeking the same basic opportunity that all of our ancestors, some of our ancestors came here in search of us, and some came not by choice. And we must remember that this America that we all claim and that people claim and hold on to that flag so firmly, that this America didn't belong to any of us, that it belonged to even a group of people that we call natives, but they were really the first Americans. It is in this notion that in this America that those voting rights of 65, the voting rights from 65 to 68 are under attack even today. We are the most murdered, most incarcerated generation, and we must view this attack on the rights of Americans, and I want to say that as Americans, not African Americans, not poor and marginalized people, but attack on Americans. We must view this as an attack on America, on our civil and on our human rights. This is an attack that was so eloquently described when it started as the war on drugs. That's it. This war on drugs has been a war on black, poor, and minority communities. It is a war that was conscribed. Yes, it was conscribed. It says you have to face the fact that the whole problem is really blacks. The key is to devise a system that recognizes this while not adhering to it. This is not the words of just some ordinary, common American. This is the words of that president, 37th president of the United States, Richard Nixon, who first declared the war on drugs. So Michelle Alexander in the book talks about this new age of Jim Crow, mass incarceration in the age of colorblindness. Michelle, colorblindness. Articulates clearly the ramification of mass incarceration and the war on drugs. She says America has created a caste system that locks millions of people in at the bottom of society based on their status as an ex-prisoner, an ex-felon. Because once you put that F felon in front of your name, X is hard to attain. So all these legal forms of what now has been described as more African American men literally involved in the criminal justice system that they were at the height of the North American slave trade. They are our children. They are my children. They are my sons. They are my brothers. They are my fathers, my uncles, and my cousins. Yes, they are, as Michelle Alexander said, let's just lock them up, and that will solve all of our problems. That's what the so-called war on drugs was supposed to do for us. Let's lock them up, and it'll solve all of our social ills. The majority of these people sell or use very little drugs comparatively to white Americans. But blacks are incarcerated not 4, not 5, but 6 and 7 times more than whites. The families of those incarcerated suffer 30% less income. So if you are the family of an incarcerated person, you suffer 30% less income. The children of those incarcerated are 25% more likely to get expelled from school. In large cities like Chicago, up to 50% of the black men have lost their right to vote. So when we hear this thing about reenfranchisement and why state laws are so against empowering and emboldening people who come back and who pay their debt to society, and what should just be commonplace to give them the franchise back, you will see the connection in this caste system that says that they shall never receive again the right to vote. It's not only the right to vote, the war on drugs has had. It is those who have been victims of using themselves because they couldn't access the healthcare system that we could no longer afford. Those who were addicts but yet treated as criminals were not treated for their addiction but treated like criminals in our caste system. This so-called war on drugs, overwhelmingly has been waged by poor and minority communities. The war that draws new lines from old habits of racial discrimination and Jim Crow. Yes, people incarcerated from this war on drugs have broken the law. And don't get me wrong, people broke the law. They should be accountable. But understand that when my son goes and broke the law, and somebody else's son goes and broke the law, I want the same privileges attributed to other folks' children. That they get a telephone call to their parents, and their parents come and pick them up. But my son gets an arrest on his record. And now that high school, that college athletic scholarship, or better yet, that academic scholarship, or better yet, that financial aid, or better yet, that access to just a whole variety of rights that have now been the dream deferred because of that arrest or that felony conviction. So, the NAACP and the work that I have an opportunity every day to put my hand to is one that's more than just about fighting just for the rights of just a particular minority group, but it is a right that we should all have as Americans. We should all expect some decency out of a criminal justice system that is a criminal justice system, not a criminal just us system. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough being a convicted felon when, as a convicted felon, a woman can't get into public housing. Not only can a woman not get into public housing, but you as a child now can't even go to live with your parents who live in the public housing. And you dare not in this generation where grandparents are raising their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. They can't even go to live with Big Grandma. Can't go spend the night at Big Mama's house because Big Mama and the landlord knows that Big Mama had little Johnny in the house, and little Johnny has been convicted before Big Mama can be put out of public housing. It's a war on poor people. It's a war on communities of colors. And who's paying the worst price on this are our children. Not just the children of blacks and other minority groups, not just poor children, but children in general, because as state budgets have increased to incarcerate, the budgets of education has been decreasing at a percentage rate that we don't even care to imagine. We all know this story all too well as black men, as black boys, when we are stopped. And we have to realize that the same privileges that are enjoyed by others are not the privileges that are enjoyed by us. W.B. Du Bois at the turn of the century talked about the problem of this century being the color line, but he also talked about the social conditions. And that Negroes were not inherently criminals. There was nothing inherent in our DNA that made us criminals, that the convict lease system, the traffic of criminal labor, the lack of juvenile reformatories, together with the unfortunate discriminating practices and prejudices and other walks of life that led to all sorts of social protests and revolt, which has led to what we call now crime in the war on drugs. Then we must look at the remedy, the same reforms to right these wrongs of these social conditions, and not in intimidation, savagery. But we have to remember that this is the same chattel slavery, the same chattel mentality that enslaved African American men, women, and children Growing up in a community, I know this story all too well. I know this story all too well growing up on the rural islands south of Charleston. I know this story all too well because it is the story of my cousins and of my friends, and I am one of those 5 of an entire high school class, African American males, that got to go to college. So when the Lions sang the song, millions didn't make it, but I was one of the ones who did. I count it all joy. I count it all joy. So we must begin to see people as now the agents of change, because the question is always, what can we do? The same kind of drive that W.E. Du Bois had at the turn of the century, the same kind of drive that Ida Wells had on telling the truth, telling about lynching in America, the same kind of drive that Charles Hamilton Houston had when he went about integrating schools. And we got to tell people that it was Charles Hamilton Houston who taught Thurgood Marshall how to be a great lawyer. Sometimes we credit the student without crediting the teacher. Doesn't that sound familiar? When Daisy Bates walked into the Little Rock Central High School with those 9 students, when Martin Luther King Jr. decided that he was going to lead the Montgomery Baptist Boy Scouts, he didn't decide, it was decided for him. And we must always remind people who sometimes would try to write us out of history that it was the NAACP who had been outlawed in Montgomery, gone underground, that started to call itself the Montgomery Bus Boycott. It was E. Nixon. It was Rosa Parks, who was secretary of the Montgomery branch of the NAACP and advisor for the NAACP Youth Council. People don't tell that kind of story. King in his book, Chaos of Our Community, talks about the fierce urgency of now. And that the hottest place in hell is reserved to those who don't do nothing. Who do absolutely nothing. Some of us got reserved seats in hell. Amen. The fierce urgency now, that we all have something that we should do, that calls us, that should prick us as people who are believers in the one and the greatest liberator that ever lived, followers of Christ. Because isn't there somewhere that he said, to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, give shelter to the homeless? And then we had community of faith demanding to be paid to do that work, which Jesus commanded them to do. And wasn't it Jesus who told folks to go by and visit people who were incarcerated, folks who were in prison? Jesus, that great liberator. So I want to challenge us tonight that we all have work to do. This is work asking you to be proactive, not about lenient laws, but laws that are smart and safe for our communities. Laws that are safe, that provide quality, safe neighborhoods in our community, that work proactively with law enforcement, where communities and law enforcement are working together, that we should not fail when we see the police officer coming down the street, that we should see the police officer as our friend. And he should not fear us as Judy's son of Bubba's boys. He should know us by name because he is a part of the community that we call home. Civil and human rights. We must work aggressively to address these things in a very smart and safe kind of, contrite kind of way. Now understand that this is bringing some strange bedfellows. When we start talking about smart and safe policies, because smart and safe policy says to us that the inequities in the criminal justice system is the inequities that reminds us about 2 young women, the Scott sisters, Jamie and Gladys Scott, who were sentenced to life in prison for having supposedly set somebody up for being robbed. When they got out of that Mississippi prison, I wish you could have seen the joy on their face of understanding what it means truly to be free. It is when the NAACP, along with allies, worked to bring the Rockefeller drug laws and reform in New York City and New York State. When in New York and New Jersey, where smart legislation giving formerly incarcerated people who had literally, when you give formerly incarcerated people the right to vote and make them active members of society, you reduce not only recidivism, it does stand for bringing down the prison population rates. When we fight, we see these things happen. When we have strange bedfellows like Newt Gingrich, who can say that we ought to increase prison population, and he can call and stand firmly in saying that we call for justice in the saving the life of a state-mandated execution of Troy Davis. Or a Republican governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who said that we no longer can spend more money on prison than we spend on education. And then we must be delighted. Even the Republican governor of Georgia committed himself to no longer incarcerating low-level drug offenders and pass laws that will analyze the criminal justice system from top to bottom, looking for positive reforms. So I am, yes, a part of this generation who see myself as part of the solution and not a part of the problem. One that calls us in the community, not as we are, but the community in which God has called us out to be. One that moves us now from where we are to where we see smart and safe policies. Can you imagine? I was sharing with students earlier today. Can you imagine if corporations would just do one thing? Ban the box. You know that box on your job application that halts many people at the front door? And they would simply ban the box. So as you as an employee would get to know Charles White, the applicant, and not trash Charles White, the applicant's application in the file because I'm a convicted felon. You get to know me just something about that in the box. So these are smart state policies that we must do. Mass incarceration in America is all of our problems. And all of us must work proactively to solve these problems. You know why? Because Christ has called us out to be the larger community. Thank you. How one person can make a difference, and I was sharing a story, but I tell that when I started to put the face on Jim Crow in my era, and when I was refused entry into that restaurant as an African American, when we decided that we were going to sue that restaurant owner, we went to sue that restaurant owner. We went to take him to state court. We went to take him to state court. We found out that we couldn't sue in state court because he had broken no state law. There was no law in South Carolina that said that a white person couldn't refuse service to a black person. You could be called neighbor or whatever else. There's no law in South Carolina that said that, it was not. And so we had taken the federal court. And we took it to federal court, and I subsequently won the lawsuit. I tell this story because the South Carolina State Legislature eventually passed the public accommodation law in South Carolina. And almost 15, 20 years later, fast forward, not even 15 years later, I was part of a group of people that went down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for an event that they call Carly Week. And I was in the fast food line at the Wendy's during Carly Week. And the young lady said to me, I was ordering something for the nominee. So now, I'm cheap, I'm sorry, I got great kids. She said, well, you need to order from the Dollar Menu now because it won't be here next weekend. Because if any of you know anything about Carly Week is called by Memorial Day weekend in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Black weekend. And she said, the Dollar Menu won't be here next weekend. I'm like, the Dollar Menu won't be here next weekend. I said, stop lying. So smart me. I took a picture of the Dollar Menu. I'm smart. So I took a picture, and sure enough, I went back next week, the very next weekend, Black Bikers weekend, same time, same date, same day of the week, and dollar menu wasn't there. And not only was the dollar menu wasn't there, I couldn't eat in the restaurant. Everything was, all food was prepared to go. So this is a joke. We can't still be doing this thing. And the only justification was, that there was no justification for what they did. It was just wrong. It was just wrong. Went to a Kangaroo gas station a few years later to use the bathroom Black Bike Week. And the bathrooms at the Kangaroo gas station had out of order. And they had a line of porta potties outside. That was out of order. That's mighty considerate that puts a porta potties in, but we went down the street to a Kangaroo gas station down the street, and it just so happened that all the Kangaroo gas stations in Myrtle Beach and Horry County had plumbing problems the same weekend, Black Bike Weekend. And we sued the Kangaroo gas station. Why? Not because the Kangaroo gas station decided that they wanted to do the right thing. They had to pay because they had to learn, and still people have to learn even today, that you can't do this and expect our children to grow up and be normal and discriminate to them in sexual ways. It was that same law that I had led to be created in South Carolina, and we ended up taking both Wendy's and the Kangaroo gas station all back to court. And so in state court, tell me God isn't good. God is a God of justice. He's a God of justice. And I believe that.
If we'd like to have some questions, we have a microphone here, and then we'll just pass the plate while the response.
You mentioned recidivism.
Yes.
Here in Texas, I think it's about 67% of folks coming out of prison are back in within 3 years. What can we do about recidivism?
I mean, one thing is, smart and safe policies, like I say, such things as man the box, and people end up back on the streets and are committed to a life of crime because, first of all, one is they have no place to go when you get out of prison. Two is they can't get a job because that's my time. They have no place to go because they can't go back and live with relatives, living on public housing and public subsidized housing. So it's absolutely forbidden. So you can do things like advocating even in your municipality, ban the box, even in your city government, your county government, ban the box on their applications. How many people would have an entryway into at least applying for a job and then be judged on that qualification rather than be judged on that issue?
From what you alluded to earlier, many individuals on the civil rights movement were next to those involved, many of those individuals who were there in the movement. What do you say tonight to the bridging in not only African Americans, but also we're here tonight to the many whites participating in the early movements, Charles, some Larry Stevens, who were right there in the middle of the movement, working with many African Americans at the time, so that issues of white supremacy, which you're alluding to, can be addressed at the heart of eliminating that image of superior and inferior color from the system in America.
First of all, I don't try to deceive our people. If you hear so many people today say that I was with Martin Luther King Jr., and outside of the March on Washington, which Martin Luther King Jr. did not call, he was only one speaker, and a rave speaker on that day. The March on Washington was called by civil and human rights organization and organized labor. Martin Luther King Jr., like I said, was one speaker. It took the whole day to narrow it down to one speech, narrowed it down to one line. and so live, I have a dream. And that wasn't even entitled to a speech. That's right. That wasn't even entitled to a speech. It was a bunch check written to America that King went to Washington to claim funds on this check that had been returned, non-sufficient funds to black communities all over the country. So I never want to fool ourselves, first of all, to making black people, putting black folks off the hook, because if all of us who said we were with King back in our local communities, our communities would have been transformed a whole lot quicker. So, the cowardice of black preachers who were, in a real sense, among the bigger hypocrites of them all when it came to this movement, because King suffered most of his criticism not only at the hands of white ministers, but also at the hands of the black church. The Progressive Baptist Convention was started when Martin Luther King Jr. and those put out the National Baptist Convention, and literally put out the convention for his progressive thoughts.
You mentioned earlier that you were excited about learning how to read, and I volunteer with a group, and we're working with kids in first, second, and third grade, so we can avoid that third grade statistic.
Yes.
But you know the statistic, 90% of them, if they can't read in third grade, end up in prison. What was it that made you so excited about learning to read so I can do this for this kids?
I think it was the love of reading that other young people had. As you heard me know, there were young missionaries that came to my island to teach us in the summertime not only how to read, how to write. And my big problem was writing, still is my big problem today. And you would ask my college English professor, Dr. Van Huss, he was asked what had that problem when I left his class. Really scared. But yes, I would just say, encourage other young readers to read with young children who need to learn how to read. That you should embolden and empower them to be, as I coined the term, not coined the term, but the term peer mentoring. And the best kind of peer pressure we can have is a positive pressure that comes from our peers. And that's what stimulated me how to read. I wish I could say there was some teacher who just sparked that moment in me. I was still writing Misha and Dende, and turning in papers. And, some summer missionaries just told me how to write a correct sentence. Not that I didn't learn it in school, it's just that it made sense to me. Because I spoke, this is the way I said, you want me to speak one way and then come to classroom and write a different way. That kind of stuff. But it was there was something about those summer missionaries that just excited me. And I realized they could do what I could do with people that was the other way.
I followed with great pain the case of Trayvon Martin, and I haven't heard much about it lately. I guess what I wanted to ask is that when I think of the world and where we're going, I always am more optimistic when I think about my own son's attitude, who's 30 years, 40 years, 30 years younger than I am. And I wonder if you see some hope for the future in terms of the younger generation and its attitude about race and the problems you're addressing. Do you see more enthusiasm for change and for, I know that doesn't solve the problem of employment, incarceration, and dealing, but do you see among young people white and non?
Yeah, I think we all have to be, we all have to be careful of the politics of fear. The politics that thinks it's always us against them. And even in the black community, we have to say this also. It's not always us against them. We must see ourselves in this together. And, people play to that fear. And I'm happy. There's been, folks have just come outright and said it this time around that we're not going to support certain candidates because of who they are. not necessarily against the policies in which they support, because the policies in which they support are policies in which some of these same people have benefited most from. And that amazes me that people would vote the politics of fear and to vote their interests.
I think my question is sort of a follow-on to that. What can we do to improve this in the future? And I know we're all appalled by the blatant racism that still goes on today, but I'm thinking, is there something we can point to? Is it we need more progressive district attorneys? Do we need better informed juries or instructed juries? Do we need to get rid of laws in the books that have mandatory sentencing? What's the problem? How keeps this going? I know. How do we do that?
How do you run? I think one is that you got to get civically involved, and you got to speak to your neighbors, and remember that all politics is local. You got to get people involved locally, and that's how we change laws. That's how we change attitudes of people. Remember, politics is made up of people. People are politicians. What we need are more. I got to be careful how we say this, because there are a whole lot of politicians who consider themselves God-fearing. So, especially here in Texas, right? I learned today that as a South Carolinian, I cringe sometimes. I'm embarrassed sometimes to say that I'm from South Carolina. And we used to say, thank God for Mississippi. I think we used to say, thank God for Texas.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My question relates to job preparedness and what initiatives are taking place within the correctional systems across this country to help prepare offenders for opportunities once they get on the outside. Because we all know when it comes to employment, the magic happens when opportunity meets preparedness.
I want you to know that the prison industry is a profit. It is driven by profit. Privatization of the prisons, first of all, has nothing to do with rehabilitation. It's filling babies. And even those prisons that are not private, it's still public jobs, because you go back to where prisons are, and prisons are usually located, contrary to what most people think, prisons are usually located in predominantly white districts, because prisons provide good jobs. And they provide good jobs, and they provide good census numbers by people who can't vote. Because, prisoners are counted where they are housed, not where they're from. So if I'm from Dallas County, and I'm in prison someplace out there, Corpus Christi, I'm counted there. So all those people in all those private prisons around the border, and all these, what we consider conservative counties in Texas and South Carolina, it's not, you got to look beyond the sauce. I used to think you got to look beyond the sauce. Because the sauce will make you think that, prisons are bad for communities and people don't want prisons. Prisons are big money makers. And the way you make money, you got to fill the beds. And I wish I could tell you that there was some great hope that prisons are now about reform and they're teaching skills that people can have when they re-enter into society. But that's not happening. And it won't happen until we get elected officials who are able to change the law and to put into place such prison reform. The other thing is that when people have a choice on whether they're going to fund job training and job readiness in prison and reentry programs, and the federal government, is the only place in which people are going to get that if they're in federal prison. And if people have a choice on whether they're going to do that, whether they're going to fund something out on state funding side, they're always going to choose state, the other things. That's among the last things that they're going to consider doing. So we have to become strong advocates. We have to become advocates in those organizations. I'll support those organizations. I tell people all the time, if you can't go support those organizations who are advocating strong prison reforms. Strong prison reform that will teach people job readiness skills so that they would be prepared for the job market when they get out. And I wish I could say that there was some magic wand. We're going to have to do that in our communities. I started to say black churches, not black churches. Communities of faith are going to have to step up and start educating and preparing folks when they get back into society. They're going to have programs that will keep children and programs that will educate young mothers. We got to put those programs, and it's going to be communities of faith, communities in general, that start those things over.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak on this because I was in Washington to the party. I had got an education down there. I went to college. I got retrained, do science, AutoCAD, accounting.
And you went to prison a long time ago, right?
A long time ago. I continue to motivate myself down there. It was about me having myself ready for society.
Yeah.
And ready for society. When I got out, I got employed with construction. That was a year ago. And a job was hard, and I lost the job. I couldn't get the article. I've been a year looking for a job. Like something that you said about that box on the application that keeps me out of the problem. Like I was on, I applied for a job Saturday or Sunday, 2 jobs. I sent in my resume to email. They contacted me and asked me to come and fill out the application for the job, but I'm pretty sure that box is going to...
And we can just ban the box, you're right.
It's going to lessen my chances of obtaining employment and go to job, even though I have the qualifications.
And you represent probably and I wasn't trying to be facetious when I said you were in prison a long time ago. I mean, because those prison programs are gone. Inmates who gain college degrees, universities are getting all kinds of funding. College professors making all kinds of money by going to teach a course at the local penitentiary or something like that. Making buku money off the state. And those things were the first to go in difficult times. Those programs are among the first to go. Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I understand that in your speech you mentioned that we as citizens and as Christians especially, we have a duty to stand up for one another, and I can appreciate that. Exploitation, maybe part of it. The only thing that's needed for evil to succeed is for good men and women to sit back and do nothing. Now, we've all been victims of some sort of discrimination at some point in my life. I'm a 60-year-old man, so I've had that experience also. Taking into consideration that those experiences were pretty obvious, like the ones that you gave about the toilets at the service station, the burger place, and of course the box. It's my personal opinion that there are 2 boxes that need built. The other one is, what's your color, what's your ethnicity? Okay. But my question is this: as we prepare to address the issues on a smart level, as you brought out, we have to understand that those who are out there that want to continue this new Jim Crow system are also addressing their issues smartly also. We live in a new age of technology. Using that technology either for or against the citizenry is something that I'm concerned about, and I know it's happening right now. So my question to you is, how are we starting to look at the new Jim Crow using the new technology to continue their job of discrimination?
So I want you to be very, and this is only a particular question. because we have to be very careful about banding the box of race and ethnicity, that word, banding that box, because that's the box that that places like the University of Texas, Austin wants to see us banned. Because they don't want to ban the legacy box, whether your grandfather or your father or your parents may get, because you get points for that. You get points for the legacy clause. They don't want to talk about that now. So I just think that we have to be smart when we think about what we're advocating, because when we ban that box, there goes the tracking. There goes so much data that is collected when that box is gone. A lot of states have gone to banning that box and everything, and that's not a policy that I would advocate. I understand where you're going with the question. That's why I say that it's a critique of the question, and just actually give the question some thought. Okay?
Okay, and I understand that too, but at the same time, you have to understand that a lot of applications get thrown in the box because of that same box. So maybe there's a smart way to address it. I don't know. I just know that
there's a law against that.
And it happens. But it happens.
It happens, but there's a law against that. But
okay, I mean, there's a lot of laws against a lot of things, but they still happen.
Yes, I'm with you. I'm just asking.
Again, we're doing a smart assessment of what we can do to as individuals and as a group and as a Christian group to change things or to affect change in some manner.
And I'm just giving a critical answer to the question. Yeah. I just want you to think of the other side of that question. And that's the flip side of why we're being against.
And I agree with
such policies. Yes, sir.
In terms of the large incarceration rate, what are the key movements in America right now to try to deal with that? Are there some specific actions that are going on that we need to be aware of?
So, yes, and the start is not only just the reading of Michelle Alexander's book, because the book is, riveting. When you look at just uncovering what the problem is, but it also gives vulnerable solutions. If you go to the NAACP website, there's the NAACP Smart and Safe program. That our policies are advocating for, not only smart programs, but also safe programs. And we want to make sure that we let people know that we're balancing the two. Because sometimes we can advocate smart, that may not necessarily be safe. Because I'll be honest with you, when somebody grabs my mama's pocketbook, I don't see a black man or white man. All I know is somebody took my mama's pocketbook. And I want that dealt with. And so I think that, we just got to be concerned about those things. And so there are some policies in which we advocate, specific policies in which we advocate for. Other allied groups that are working on like issues also, which you can find there also. NAACP.org.
So a naive question for you, with regard to the box. So the box is gone. There is still, so you have entree to the entry before face-to-face. I see you have someone behind you here. But you still have that block that is there. Once that is known, there's a door. Beyond the whole of human interaction that is there once someone has a chance to prove who they are and show who they are and the value that they bring, it's a step in the right direction, but I guess maybe I just want to get everything resolved as quickly as possible. But what brings that, what could come once we get beyond that?
I think it's advocating for particular reentry programs that we not only have, and then again it goes back to rethinking the answer to the programs because they deal with quote-unquote set-asides. But in particular industries in city government, there may need to be spots reserved, because we want to make sure that folks who are coming out of our city jails, our county jails, have an opportunity that they can be employed with the same county that they incarcerated in, and that they can become productive citizens, because, you know, otherwise the cycle keeps going. So I think that we have to, you know, be smart about. There's also my critical analysis of my answer, uninformed answer, and I say uninformed because that's not one of the back of our suggestions that I would feel comfortable with. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I've got a question maybe more personal. I've been involved in the prison industry off and on over the years since I got out of the military many years ago. And the question is this, of all the prison ministries, especially those that follow the incarcerated person upon release, are there some models that you see that tend to work? Where people go in prison and they're there when they get out. And in fact, I'm going to a dinner tomorrow night to honor some people that do that kind of work. And I don't know what statistics are or anything.
Yeah, and I think the most successful models are local models. I mean, I can go back and only some programs that we work with on local levels that are just absolutely remarkable, you know, of the mentoring, and the person is assigned a mentor when they get out of prison. That person commits to following that person for X amount of years. It is already prearranged particular jobs that people can go into, particular industries. There's a mattress company in Georgia where the owner of the company, you know, says that she openly hires convicted felons. You know, again, this goes back to those, it goes back to these untested, unproven kind of interest I could give. I have a good friend who is a business owner. He was a citizen of another country, but was a business owner in America. Went to prison. When he got out, he could not find a job here. Went back to his home country, opened up the same business, same industry in his home country, and now he brings to his home country former inmates. However, this is the trick. You can't get a visa or a passport. Goes back to the whole system again. That it's an unproven factor, because there were some extenuating circumstances that allow some of those people to get visas or passport or temporary visas and stuff in another country. We always see immigration policies only working in America on our side, but they also work in other countries also. And it becomes a likelihood for people who can't get a fair opportunity here in this country to go and start over someplace else. And the thing is, when we let them out, and the big issue is a lot of times we won't even let them out this country. We're not going to let you out. We're going to pay like they ought to stay here also. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Reverend White, we're very pleased to have you with us tonight. We hope you please give Reverend White a I'm Eric Fulker, Senior Pastor here at Northaven. Just want to welcome you and thank you for being here again tonight. It's our great privilege to be the host of this series, to invite speakers on issues of justice each month to be here. Every night is always inspiring. And this allows us again the chance to remind you that we hope you signed up on the email list or when you register for this event so we can notify you. We do most of our notifications through email now, and so we hope you'll get on the list and perhaps be a part of future conversations as well. We want you to remember the text sample retreat on November 10th, the morning of the 10th. As Kim mentioned earlier, it will be a really powerful event. We're consider that as well. We have refreshments in the atrium, and immediately, as soon as we open the doors here, we hope you'll go out there and visit a little bit more and continue the conversation. Let's stand, if you will. Go now, wherever you go, to do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with